Hi, Amy Shaw here. It's December 23rd, 2016. I haven't made a video in a little while. It's winter. We're just coming off a winter solstice. Typically, this is the time of year for me where I kind of just go inward. I'm a little more contemplative. I'm sure a lot of people feel that energy of the season, that rhythm. And certainly for me, it's a time where I am more quiet and go into myself a little bit more. Something that's really been on my mind, though, really since Thanksgiving is this idea of ceremony. And I'll tell you a little story of how that came about for me, actually. About 10 or 12 years ago. Okay, first of all, I grew up in a family. My mom was a single mom for a large part of my childhood. It's just the most significant memory, really, I have of her in our time together was her as a single mom. And so she financially struggled, but my mom also valued what I would call class. And so even though we technically lived in poverty, my mom still made an effort to take me to museums. As a child, I went and saw the Joffrey Ballet. I went and saw Peter Pan at the Pantages. So she was always trying to expose me to art and to culture, and I'm really, really grateful for that. One of the downsides of that, though, is my mom was very formal. So even our casual dinners were often what I would consider formal. She was very particular about manners, and, you know, I was raised in that sort of rigid sense of what side the fork went on, what side the knife went on, where the spoon was at. My mom even had a little butter knife rests for the knives, and I mean the whole 9 yards. And a lot of times even our casual dinners were very formal like that. Raising my own children, I let go of a lot of that rigidity. I'm a third generation only child, so it's easier to manage one child, particularly a female child, than 3 kids. I had 3 kids, which, you know, is a lot of chaos in the house, and it's fun. There's a lot of laughter, and I enjoyed every second of it. But along the way in that process, I let go of a lot of that rigidity that I experienced in my own childhood. So now let me go back to what I was originally saying. About 10 or 12 years ago, I asked for a dish set for Christmas, and I picked out 5 or 6 different sets that I really liked, and, you know, gave that list to my mom, and she picked one of those sets and bought me a beautiful 8-piece set of dishes. Unfortunately, I never ever used them because raising my kids, like I said, I was much more casual. I let go a lot of that sort of rigidity, and we didn't really have occasion to use the dishes. They're very, very heavy plates, and they're beautiful. They remind me of sort of like a handmade pottery. They just have a very organic, earthy feel to them, and I love them even to this day, but I never used them. When we moved from California to Texas, I lovingly boxed them all up, but we've been here 3.5 years now, and those dishes have not been out of the box. Just before Thanksgiving, I was having this itch to just start clearing out some of this crap that's all over my house. And there was a box sitting on my kitchen floor at the end of my cabinets. I didn't know what was in it. So I opened it, and it was the dishes. So I pulled them out, and I just had this moment of admiring them, thinking how beautiful they are. But at this point, like, all 3 of my kids are raised into adulthood. My youngest son still is with us, but at this point, and the other factor too is these plates are very heavy, and because of my cancer treatment, I have neuropathy pretty bad in my hands, so even the prospect of washing them was overwhelming to me. And as much as I took them out and admired them and thought, oh, they're so pretty, and someone actually told me to replace the plastic dishes that we have with the real dishes, since I seem to love them so much, but I just couldn't because of the neuropathy and it just not being practical. I couldn't bring myself to do that. So I decided this is a box that's going to go. I'm going to have to get rid of the dishes. I've had them 10, 12 years. They're sitting in a box. I don't use them. Just follow me on this because this really is related to ceremony. So then we take this pilgrimage, this long road trip to Arizona to visit my 93-year-old grandmother who is living in an assisted living environment. This woman must have had no less than 8 different sets of dishes because she gave my mom sets. She's given me 2 or 3 different sets over the years, and got rid of a lot of the stuff when she downsized and moved into her assisted living apartment. So when we went to visit her at Thanksgiving, I was shocked that she's in this little tiny apartment. This 93-year-old woman pulls out 2 more boxes full of dishes and she's trying to give them to me. And as she's talking to me about them, she's telling me, you know, this is a set of black dishes and how much she loved them and how beautiful the table was. She really liked to put a white tablecloth, and she had black dishes with her silver, and she was just very enamored with the way that her table looked and how beautiful it was. I don't recall ever seeing these dishes or seeing her table set like that, so I don't have any kind of like personal or sentimental connection to it. Like I said, the woman had a lot of dishes. So in my mind, I'm like, oh God, you know, I've already had to get rid of so much stuff, and here she is giving me 2 more sets of dishes. I have a set of dishes at home that I've never even used that I am in love with. They're absolutely beautiful that I have to get rid of them. So it really felt like a burden to me in a sense. I ended up sending them home with my daughter, so that worked out. But it really caused me to start thinking seriously about this idea of ceremony. And, you know, I think my grandma comes from an era, you know, she grew up in the Great Depression, so everything was valued to this insane degree. And I think that somehow that's really carried through generation to generation and on to me as well. I think that a lot of us from our generation have this unhealthy attachment to material things at times, and letting go of stuff can be really hard. And this idea of dishes. So visiting her really caused me to kind of take a step back and really evaluate, you know, what this is, this concept that she's so attached to, these dishes and how beautiful they look, and the more ceremonious aspects of life, of living. And I think for myself over the years, because my kids haven't really cared so much about that stuff, they're just kids, you know, they just want to play, and it's burdensome to them in some ways. My husband certainly doesn't care about that stuff. I think that ceremony overall tends to be a more feminine aspect. It's the thing that the women tend to bring into the family, into the home, the traditions, the ceremonies, the rituals. And all of this is really connected. You know, as I stepped back and really started thinking about this since Thanksgiving, like I said, I've really been thinking about what ceremony is and what it means. And there's a certain sort of texture or element to it that really is related to joy, to grace, to a sense of nobility, even a sense of divinity. And I was just thinking, you know, as I became more and more aware and contemplated it more, that I've let a lot of it go, and probably to my detriment. And it really is a fine line between materialism and being attached to things and ceremony, and bringing yourself present and appreciating the texture of life, the beauty of life, without being attached. And so I decided, although I am still going to get rid of my dishes, that I want to spend the next year, 2017, really, really focused on ceremony. When I first joined Instagram, the reason I did is because I wanted to create a space there for myself, sort of a living photo journal, where I started out doing a year-long project of gratitude. So every day I would take 2 pictures of something I was grateful for and upload that to my Instagram. And I did that for 365 days. I really learned a lot in that year, because each day I would spend the entire day kind of searching for those 2 things to be grateful for. And so it kept me all day contemplating gratitude and what I was grateful for. And so obviously at the end of the year, I was a changed person. I mean, that's going to happen inevitably. But focusing in specifically on gratitude, I think definitely benefited me. Since that time, my Instagram space got used for a couple other little projects. I did a manifestation project. I did a self-love project. I did a church project. But those were short, a couple weeks, a month. This time I want to focus again, and I want to really do a year of just diving into ceremony and photographing daily, so that I become more aware of bringing ceremony into my life. And, part of this I want to really explore for myself the definitions, the differences between ceremony and ritual and tradition. And I have a feeling that these things really aren't all that much different from each other. For me, I really realized the importance of this because, like I said, I've seen over the years how I've slowly sort of cut the corners on things. An example I can give, a recent example I can give of that is, it's about to be Christmas time, is again, going back to my mom. I grew up that every Christmas she would, do these lavish wrapping. I consider it lavish. She would wrap the gifts in these just very beautiful ways. She was a woman ahead of her time, but I remember in the 80s, before plastic bags, she gathered a lot of the brown paper bags. She saved them from the grocery stores, the ones they would put the groceries in. And she cut all of those and wrapped all of the gifts in the brown paper bags. And then she decorated them with these beautiful big red bows and attached ornaments to them. And just every package was so lovingly tended. And with my own children, I did not do that. And the reason why is because the kids get irritated. They try to open the package and they can't get the ribbon off, and then they just rip it. And, they don't care about it. They don't value it. And for me, I thought, what's the point of putting in all the effort and all the time to make this pretty, and when it's only going to be pretty for a really short amount of time? And I just didn't do it. So I wrap their gifts, but I don't even bother putting ribbons or bows on it. And it's just one of many examples how I, over the years, have let go of some things because what's the point? What's the value? So because my mom would always give these gifts with these amazing bows and all kinds of accoutrements on them, I would recycle them. I would roll up the ribbons and, take meticulous care to recycle all of these things. I have boxes of these rolled up ribbons and bows. I mean, really nice ribbons, but I don't ever use them, because like I said, nobody in my family really cares about that. And it's just a way that I could cut the corner and, not expend energy on something that nobody really cares about. So the other day I was wrapping some gifts for some dear sisters of mine, and I couldn't just give them the gifts just wrapped with no ribbons on them. So I pulled out the boxes of the recycled ribbons from my mom's packages, and as I was decorating them, tying the ribbons on and arranging the ribbon, just so, when it was done, I looked at the packages and they were just beautiful. It really warmed my heart to be able to give a gift, not only what was inside of the gift, but to give a gift that was so beautiful that I had taken the care and consideration. And that's such a simple thing, and it's really not a big deal thing, but it was a simple thing. And it just made me realize again how much I have cut corners and the value of taking those extra kind of ceremonious steps to bring a different quality and texture into my day-to-day life. And so I'm realizing that there is value, there is substance there, and it isn't on a material level. It really has to do with these things I'm talking about: self-expression, grace, joy, beauty, and I think that letting some of that go, while I think at the moment that I made those decisions, they were smart decisions that made my life simpler and more about survival. I'm kind of coming back around to that and wanting to be more fully present in the moment and more aware and meticulous, and to bring a certain elegance and grace back into my life. So, yep, I am going to practice a year of ceremony and on a daily basis. And I would really invite for you to consider doing the same thing. We can kind of take this journey together. And I'd be interested to hear from you what you know, what you've learned about ceremony, how you incorporate it into your daily life, if it's important to you or not. I think this issue is very, very relevant to women today. It goes back to what I was saying about women being the sort of hearth tenders. We're the ones that bring the fire into the home, the warmth into the home. The feminine, we're the ones that create the culture in the home. That feminine energy is the one that brings the culture to the home, that creates the environment, that makes home home. I recently sat with a woman who is at where I was probably at about 10 years ago. She's a stay-at-home mom, and, she's working really hard doing all the things that stay-at-home moms do. And those of us that have been in this situation know how incredibly valuable that work is, but we still live in this society that doesn't value it. And our own families don't really value it. They tend to take it for granted. And, I sat with her and she cried for a very long time, just expressing this sense of sadness and this frustration and this sense of loss of self, and just this constant self-sacrifice and not being able to self-care and feeling unappreciated and just all that stuff. And I really think that a lot of this has to do also with ceremony, that, we get so bogged down in the mundane that we forget to bring that element of grace and elegance into our lives. And I'm not talking about transcending. I'm not saying, let's do a bunch of ritual and ceremony to transcend the human experience. I'm actually saying the opposite. I'm saying that connecting with the divine aspects of our human experience. And I think that we could make even doing the dishes ceremonious if we trained ourselves to that sort of frequency of being. So I am really excited about this project. I really am. And I think that it's going to also sort of teach me how to be a little bit more playful, a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more faithful, actually, which is another interesting element of ceremony. The Bible says to pray without ceasing. And I don't know how you really do that. In Christianity, I was taught praying was like this: Dear Lord, thank you, blah, 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 blah. It was very wordy, and it was very much about saying the right thing for the people that we're hearing, and pretending like we were talking to God. I mean, not that people weren't talking to God, but these public prayers. That's how I was taught to pray, and I just never really fully connected with that. And when the Bible says pray without ceasing, I'm pretty certain it doesn't mean that mode and method of prayer. For me, when I think of that, I think it's a constant connection, a constant dialogue and connection with the divine. And I fully believe that ceremony, ritual, tradition, that these are ways that we do that. But we can also get caught up in the sort of rote aspect, the mundane aspect. I really want to spend the year focusing in on that, so that the nuances of that in the day-to-day experience become something I'm very conscious of. I'm excited. I'm excited about it. And for me, I think I know that I'm going to learn a lot at the end of my year project, but I think for me, a lot of ceremony has to do with that. It's the expression, the outward expression of the inward experience in a way that honors that, and at the same time can sort of like leave it there and let it go. It just brings something. It brings something. It brings a level of consciousness and grace and elegance. And I'm excited about this project. I really am. I had, we were in this season of ceremony. Went to winter solstice celebration Wednesday night on Solstice. And then last night I went to a Chumpy rite ritual from Kiro shamanism. And I was very blessed by that. We were asked to bring something on altar, as usual in shamanic circle. And last week, I was given a white feather. It was just there on the sidewalk where it probably shouldn't have been. There was definitely no birds around. It wasn't at a park or even in a more natural habitat. It was actually in a sidewalk in front of a store. And there it was, this white feather. White feathers, some people get them all the time. I don't. They're pretty rare for me, but they're also pretty significant, the symbolism of them. So I grabbed that white feather and, of course, brought it home, put it on altar in my own home. And so when we were asked to bring something to altar for circle, I brought the white feather. I didn't realize that it was going to be used in despacho. So I was, at first when she picked it up to put it in the despacho, I was like, no, not my feather. I really wanted to take it home and do some more ritual with it. But I let it go. I let it go. And so that's another aspect of ceremony, of ritual, a tradition that I want to really explore is this idea of materialism and attachment, because those are the things that have actually, I think, caused me to shy away from ceremony. One of the things we were given last night, these are handmade in Peru, and they're used to tie the mesa bundles. I personally am not a mesa carrier. I do have a medicine bag, but the Kiro path, I'm not 100% convinced that's my path. I'm a student at the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, and they don't teach ceremony or ritual because they teach core shamanism. That is the universal aspects of shamanism in every culture. So I don't get any ceremony from the foundation. So I'm kind of exploring other aspects of shamanism, the cultural aspects of shamanism. And the Kiro path is one that I'm learning more and more about. And it's interesting. It has a lot to me. I pick up a lot of elements of Catholicism even, which really isn't surprising. I took anthropology in college and I learned about the mestizos and how the Spanish came, the Catholics came, and all the missionaries, and they sort of diluted the original culture by Catholicism. And I think that that's carried through. So I see a lot of the elements, and they are more ritualistic elements. So that's interesting to me. One of the things I do like about the Kiro path is that it is very ceremonial. It is very ritualistic, and the despachos are a very big part of it. I've been to several despacho ceremonies now, and I do really connect with it. There is a certain element of joy to it, gratitude. I mean, it brings home, and it's a very textural way of self-expression. And each despacho is a unique piece of art, really, and you're energetically infusing into that, and these things are some of the elements of ceremony. So I'm appreciating that, learning how to do ceremony in a certain context such as that, and I look forward to continuing to do that work on my own, even outside of shamanic circles, but in my day-to-day life in my home. Last week, my husband and I attended a Celtic Christmas concert at a very old Catholic church in downtown Austin. Beautiful, beautiful church. The church choir was also part of it, and it was just an absolutely beautiful, lovely, lovely ceremony. Yeah, I could really connect with the Catholic tradition and the ritual, and I can understand why people get drawn into that. But anyway, going back to this, I just want to use this as an example. This was given to us, and this is quite special. I mean, not only was it made by a Quiro family in Peru and traveled all the way to the United States, but it was also taken to Standing Rock and has been back. So those of us that were in this ritual, got to choose from a pile of these if we wanted one. And I grabbed it. And the reason I'm sharing it with you is because one of the men that was in circle with me, he said, ordinarily, he would be afraid to use something like this because it has it's rare. It has a precious value to it. And so, he put his around his neck, and wore it as a necklace, but he was saying that, ordinarily he would go home and bury it in a drawer or something. And I'm glad that he said that, because I have those tendencies as well to do that type of thing, to place a value on something in the material sense, and then to be afraid to actually use it because it might get damaged. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't use my plates all these years that I had them, because they're so beautiful and I love them so much. What if they chipped or broke? I mean, they're big, heavy plates and I can't replace them. The same thing with candles. I've noticed that I will buy candles and not burn them because I'm afraid that then I won't have it anymore. It's kind of ridiculous, but I think that what I'm sharing is not all that uncommon. I think that other people have similar experiences. And so for me, bringing the feather to altar and then having her put it in despacho, where we're going to actually burn it in the fires next week, that tugged on my heart. It was hard, but it was my first lesson really of ceremony, ritual, and of letting go. So I'm really excited to be spending this next year learning about it. And I hope that you engage in dialogue with me about ceremony and ritual, tradition, all these things I'm talking about, grace, legacy, all these things, and what they mean to you. And I'd like to know how you incorporate these things into your daily life, and if it's a meaningful part of your practice. So anyway, I hope that you have an amazing time exploring your own tradition and values, ceremony, rituals in this time that's offering this abundance of opportunity to explore that. And Merry Christmas, or Happy Hanukkah, or Blessed Solstice, or Crazy Kwanzaa, whatever it is that you celebrate. This definitely is a season of celebration. All right, so I'll see you again soon.